Hi. So, thank you for such a warm welcome. And first of all, also thank you for all of you who are now still focused, because I know that it's all last a few hours for now. So I am here today to talk to you about plain language and how to implement it in mobile applications and web pages. But before I get there, let me start with a little story. In 1989, a Chinese aircraft traveling in zero visibility crashed into the mountains just minutes after the takeoff. So as usually, the first thing that the experts do in such case is to establish the problem. What was the problem? What caused such a dramatic situation? So this is what happened. Imagine that you are this pilot. You see nothing what's in front of you. And the only thing that you can actually rely on is the screen. What you have to know in this place is that in US-made aircrafts, when the system wants you to raise the attitude of the plane, it displays a text. And the text is, pull up. Second. It's pull up. So what's pretty obvious for us is not that much obvious for other people. And what turned out pretty quickly was that the last words that the Chinese pilot said to his co-pilot just seconds before the crash was, "What does the pull-up mean?" Yikes. Yeah, so people awareness about the importance of plain communication raised. So they started to become more and more aware of the fact that whether you are the pilot of the plane or maybe just a random guy trying to cross the street safely, you simply have a right, sorry for that, you simply have the right to understand all the crucial informations that are around you. And not only ones that can decide about your life or death. So this awareness resulted in Barack Obama signing the Plain Language Act in 2010. According to the Act, every public institution in the United States is simply obliged to form their regulation in a plain way that is clearly understandable for the audience. So today I would like to take this idea farther than Barack and to tell you how to implement this plain language for the welfare of your businesses. How to implement it in your mobile applications, in some web pages, and how to present your business to the customers. So what actually is this plain language? By definition, it's an expression of essential information so that it can be understood and used by the person who needs the information. If this is still vague, the US Center for Plain Language formed their own definition. And in this definition, they poked like three main points, three main conditions that the text needs to fulfill to consider that this is plain. So first of all, this text needs to let the user find what they need, then understand what they find, and also implement in life what they have just found. What I would like you to remember after this presentation is that if you want to create something in plain language, you can simply never start with just taking a pen or just getting to the keyboard and writing. It never starts with writing. So the first two phases of this is planning and preparing. So what does it mean? Planning means gathering all the data about your target audience. So answering the questions, actually, how does your audience communicate? What words do they use? Because the words that they use is not necessarily the same group of words that you use in your daily life. Then it comes time for preparation, like preparing phase. So in this phase, you just form the basic structure of the content with all the bullet points, where you would put which part, and so on. So this takes time, but this is really worth to form it in this place. So after the second phases, it comes the time for writing. So you just put your thoughts together and just write everything down. And it should be always followed by revising. What's in this phase? When you revise your content, you can first just check it by yourself and simply like figure out, oh, this is not that great, I would improve it, and I know that I can improve it. But the crucial thing is that you just should show this content, this form of text that you have just created, to some group of people that might be representative. So you think about your target audience, you pick some representatives, show them the text, and simply ask, do you understand it? Is this the form of communication that you would actually use, like on your daily basis? Is it clear to you? Does it take too much time for you to understand it? Does it need some additional explanations, maybe? So only if you know the answers, you can move further. And the final phases is designing the final product. So in this phase, you just put the structure, the first structure that you have just defined, together. Sometimes you redefine it, sometimes you improve it. And you also add every graphical part. So this covers tables, bullet points, but also some graphics, pictures, animations. This is all included in this fifth phase. All right. So what's the first rule when you start to create your plain text? So first, does it work? Yeah? All right. So first of all, you should just use simple and short sentences. You would say that this is so obvious, that every person usually uses simple sentences and what's the big deal? But actually, this is what I have found on the internet. So just let me read it. This is the answer that the company gave for the question, what does your company do? What are your services? By taking a unique, longitudinal, long-term approach to data analytics, we provide a whole new depth of understanding and a higher level of insights for the partners and consumer brands we serve. I'm not reading anymore. Now, please raise your hands if you understand what are this company's services. I don't understand it neither. Sorry. So, on the other hand, Dropbox does the things really, really good. So what you can see is just like 2 lines in which Dropbox, which is a really huge company, and they could like follow up in their explaining what they really do. They just form their idea in 1 simple sentence. Dropbox Business simplifies your work with a central place to access and share files. Boom. You've got everything in these 2 short lines. And this is it. You know what the company is about. Now, form short paragraphs. Here is an example from my books. I really like this example because actually my books forms their paragraphs in, as you can see, like 3 or 2 lines. And this is the same situation here. This is taken from some random web page that I have found. You can see really short paragraphs which cover briefly all the information. So what I would like you to know is that in plain language, it is not required to form paragraphs that are that short. This is just the masterpiece, but this is not required. Actually, according to the methodology, the paragraph should never take more than 5 to 7 lines. Because if you exceed this 7th line, first of all, your vision gets pretty tired, and also you don't get the content that quickly. Use bullet points, lists, and tables. And actually, this is a use case of my piece of work from Untitled Kingdom. So what's the story behind it? So previously, this is our services webpage. So previously, we had a little fuss, and we had a sort of problem, because Untitled Kingdom does not only some software services, but we also provide some designs, app store optimization, so the services are wider. So our services webpage was quite not that well structured, and we had a really high bounce rate on it. So what we did? We sat down and thought what we should do, actually. What to do with this services webpage and to provide some simple explanation to make people understand anything. So we get to the point where I simply redesigned all the content and also redesigned the structure of the webpage. And what you can see here is nothing more but a table. Like every color is simply one column of the table. And inside the table, you can see, inside the column, you can see headlines, subheadlines. And if you are curious what does some particular subheadline cover, you can just click and go further to some subpage and get to know. So what happened after we did it? So first of all, obviously our bounce rate on the services webpage became really, really low. So this was the first improvement. But the second thing was that we started getting mails. And those mails started with, hello, I've just visited your services webpage. I really like how clearly you form all that's involved in there. Now please tell me something more about the service, blah, blah, blah. So now how it made me feel, like for the creator of this content, like a huge yabba dabba do. It works. It simply works. I just started to, believe that what I have just tested on the web page, it really does work. So this is also why I'm today here, just to share it with you. Use graphics and think about proper layout. So this is an example from Duolingo, I guess. And what's really important in this example, when you look at this graph, this is not just, I don't know, a butterfly with a single task to be beautiful. No, this graphic actually visualizes what the text is about. So if you don't get the proper understanding of what's involved inside the text, inside the paragraph, you just can help yourself with looking at the picture. I am sure that also Justyna, today's speaker, Justyna in her presentation mentioned the example of the arrow on those e-learning courses and how it worked, how it helped people understand, write the course. So this is the same example. Don't use vague metaphors and pumped up expressions. So this again is the example of how company can answer to your question, what do you do? I had a mercy to blur the name. Lets you experiment on everything through design choices to algorithms. That's way the best ideas always win and the best customer experiences get even better. And it becomes even funnier like below. We believe in making people's lives easier. Does your investor pay you for believing? Is it the service that you provide for the customers? Is it what you do for life? You believe? I have no clue what those companies do. Neither the first one nor the second one. Sorry. On the other hand, we've got a really cool example from Buffer. Buffer is the best way to drive traffic, increase fan engagement, and save time on social media. Yeah, we've got like 3 simple things that this company helps you in. And actually, if I was to improve like one simple thing in this sentence, I would make it, Buffer is the best online tool that helps you drive traffic, increase fan engagement, and save time on social media. Simple. Avoid phrasal verbs and multiple meaning words. So this is again the example from Duolingo, and we can read here, Duo has always been a sharp guy, now he will look sharp too. So in case of Duolingo, such communication is pretty justified because the purpose of Duolingo is to teach you the language. So all in all, if you don't understand what does the look sharp mean, this phrase, you just go out of the app, you go to some dictionary, and then you learn the phrase. So the aim is reached. But if your app is not Duolingo, please don't use such metaphors, because the first thing that people feel when they read something and don't understand it is frustration. And if they are curious enough to leave your page and go to the dictionary, then chances are high that they will just, before they come back, they will just go to their favorite, let's say, news page and learn something about the best day in Ben Affleck's life, or something about Jennifer Lopez, or about what the squirrel did in a park in your town, and they will just simply never want to come back to your app again, or to your web page. They will simply not remember about it anymore. So now I have presented you the to-dos and not to-dos for creating some plain language content. Now, why is it that important to use it for your businesses? So first of all, plain language increases efficiency. Now imagine it. You are the boss, and all of your staff, like every employee, understands all the procedures that are inside the company, all his tasks. They even know how does the dishwasher work. They never ask questions. So what you gain, except for the peace of mind and just peace, you just gain your time. It increases efficiency. In the same time, people can do more without asking the questions. Now, if you simply transfer the situation to the situation of the relation between user and the app, you've got some ideal situation. You've got a user who goes inside the app and understands its flow perfectly, understands the aim, doesn't need some additional explanatory notes, doesn't need anything. What goes with it? Plain language saves money. Because as you know, like every writer needed to provide some additional explanatory notes. Every lawyer who sometimes needs to look at it and say whether it is right or wrong or something should be improved. Every worker of some customer service that provides some explanations or deals with some complaints, it all comes with money. So when I was trying to prepare for this presentation, I found a really nice use case from a company who actually used plain language in their procedures. So this company spent like $1 million annually to administer their inner form for the employees. And what's important, this form was a printout. It was never a PDF. So those employees needed to fill some particular form, part of the form, and it took a lot of time, it took a lot of explanations, and also a lot of money. So what did this plain language consultant do? He just cut the form short. He just cut it in half and also divided it for some particular parts and defined which type of employee should fill which particular part. Now what happened? After half a year, this company saved like $700,000 because of lack of the necessity to make some printouts, because lack of explanations needed also. So if you consider that the former cost was 1 million and then they saved 700,000, you make a really good % of gain. Plain language increases customer satisfaction. This is quite obvious that in the era of Twitter, Facebook, and other social media, if your customers are simply dissatisfied with your product, they will find a way to complain about it publicly and share their dissatisfaction with their friends. But on the other hand, if they love your product and they really, really are into it, they feel more eager to share also their love to your product. So they simply recommend it to others. They do things for your good PR, let's say. I have also added this last point about a week ago, because actually plain language is the method which is now recommended by GDPR regulations. So GDPR really recommends plain communication to help people understand all the privacy policies of the companies. Now you would ask why? Well, just to make those people understand what they really agree to, what they don't agree to, and what is the privacy policy of the company. Why are they sharing their personal data? Plain language gives you better understanding of the audience. Remember that I have mentioned the workflow of creating the plain content. Now, whether you want it or not, you really have to start with asking a question about your target. So you have to know, how do they communicate? What are their needs? What are their daily problems? So if you know that, consciously or subconsciously, you simply make a better marketer. You can simply market your product better because you know who is your target group, who is your customer, who are all those people that you are targeting. And now this is my favorite topic, and I would really try very hard not to get too much into it because I could talk about it like in hours, maybe later after the presentation. Plain language lets you reach more readers. And who I mean? I mean all those people with cognitive and sensory issues that are somehow excluded from the majority of company communications. If you think that I am talking about the minority, just let me tell you the numbers. It's like 1 in 68 children in United States who are diagnosed with autism nowadays. Also 9 in 10 is diagnosed with dyslexia. 20% of American society have some level of visual impairment, and it's also almost the same number for people with hearing loss. And those are only those groups which I have picked. So now think, if you put these groups together, combine this percentage, chances are high that the number of those people would exceed the number of the targeted group that you are now targeting. So my question is, if we can be fair to people, make our content inclusive, make our business inclusive, and also our services, add plus 10 points for GDPR compliance and save money in the same time, why shouldn't we even try? Now, I am sure, just to close my presentation, I am sure that now, in your heads, at least some of them, there is one question. If I focus that much on those groups that I have just mentioned, won't it somehow maybe harm the target group that I am now targeting, so my typical John? So I would like to ask you to spend like this 1 minute to create a persona with me of this typical John. But the name of our John would be Nancy, all right? This is Nancy. Nancy is a 35-year-old woman. She's the mother of 2. She is highly qualified. She speaks 3 languages. She's the graduate of law on Cambridge University. So today, Nancy and her 2 daughters are going to the station to visit the granny. The question is, if you tell Nancy to watch her luggage carefully and take care that all her belongings are carefully taken care of while approaching the station, will she understand it? She will. Yeah, she will. This is the type of communication that she probably uses in her daily work. She would have no problem with this. But I assure you that she will feel more comfortable and simply take up her actions easier if you just tell her to watch her stuff while she's on station.
Thank you, Natalia. Guys, do you have any questions? Yes, there are questions.
Hi, I'm Jorge, by the way. So I agree completely with you with the plain language, but we also have to work with marketing sometimes, and they kind of like baroqueism and vague meaning. So how do you deal with 2 different ways of writing when you have to write with them or create something with them?
I actually just write down the contents, how I think about it, and then try to figure out where I used, for example, some metaphors, then delete it. And really, there is the entire list of communication, like some particular verbs and phrases, and they play content equivalent, and they are available on Plain Language Co.uk. Something like this, you can Google it, like easily. There is the entire list created, so there is you can check whether the words that you are using are actually those ones which would be understandable.
Thank you.
Yeah, there was a question here.
Hi, I'm Tom from Xeris Malta. I wanted to ask you if you just mentioned the website, you mentioned the act signed by Obama. There is also a European Union directive, I believe, on plain language. Is there any kind of organization and any kind of formalization of a standard going on with plain language? Because it kind of reminds me of simplified technical English, STE standard, which is used in the aerospace industry, which I had a little bit dealing of, and this is very formalized. Like it has a list of words that you can use in what context. Is there anything of that kind for plain language? And do you know of any actual tools that help you automatically check, for example, your text and at least give some warning signs for things that would be a problem in that case?
Mm-hmm. So if I were to mention the tools, there are two that come to my mind in just the first glimpse. It's Readable.io, I guess, something like this. This is the website where you can just put your text and it tells you whether it is readable or not. Sometimes you have to pay for it as far as I believe it's like this. And also Hemingway. Hemingway is really good for this. Oh, I see you ticking. You know the app. Yeah, it's really rocks. And if you think about the organizations, there is the Plain Language Society in the United States, and this is also the country where plain communication is the most popular. It's not that much known, for example, here in Poland. I hope that this would change. But yeah, there is this plain language community in the United States, and you can just search for their list of words on their websites.
And one more here.
Golden soap for this man.
Hi, it's me again. I've got a question that are you able to arrange some kind of workshop? Because I've got some bunch of developers who needs that.
Like 300.
Do we have a deal or?
Yeah, like for you always.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one more here.
I'm wondering if you know any specific company that uses plain language for technical documentation. Because, for example, when I think about telecommunications and writing about interfaces or IPsec protocol in plain language, it's simply not possible. So,
well, I'm afraid in this case you are a better expert than I am. I'm not a technical writer, so actually I don't know whether some company uses it actually for this purpose. But I use it, and you can just choose to use it actually. Whatever you write, whether this is a blog or a content for some explanatory notes, or maybe just an SMS or some content for a website, whatever, you can just try to revise what you write and check if you can put it in a plain way.
okay, thanks.
And we have one more question. Yeah.
Here? Yeah. Can you hear me?
Sort of.
Yeah. In the quest to create plain language interfaces and text in general, do you take any specific steps to avoid patronizing users by being too simplistic?
This is why I deliberately use this case of Nancy. I mean, you have to try really, in my opinion, you have to try really hard to talk to users in words that are just too simple. Because we use apps, we use a lot of them in our daily activities. So if I remember sum up for some particular form of communication, it's never that it was just too easy. If it is easy, I just get it and go further. If this is just too difficult, I remember that this is just too pumped up and delete it from the screen. So I would say it's really hard to offend the users with the simplicity of your words.
I think, there's a distinction between easy and simple. And while I think everything should be easy, I'm not sure that it works for everything to be simple, especially if you're talking to someone who's more of an expert than the regular user.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, that depends on the definition of your user base. But especially in B2B areas, I think it might work, in a bad way for you to be too simple.
But as I mentioned, there are those two phases of creating the plain content. So it is not like you create something and this is perfect for every group. First of all, when you know who are you writing to and what type of communication they use, then you choose your words. So you choose words which you believe that are applying to this particular group of people. You can test it, and this is also obligatory in those methodology. So you can never know more than from just asking the users.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, one last question from Rahel. I don't need to finish. Jacek, can we have the mic for Rahel up there? Yeah, thank you.
Hi, thanks. Thank you for your presentation, because I've been a plain language advocate since the 1990s in British Columbia. And I wanted to kind of respond to that, the idea of, is it going to offend your users? And I'll give you an anecdote of how this kind of plays out. So I was working with lawyers, and we said we're going to explain how to use this new computerized intake system. And so we're going to take the existing manual and we're going to make a plain language edit. And they went, no, don't dumb it down for us. And we said, okay, we won't. We did. And then we gave it back to them and they said, you changed some of the rules. And so we looked at the language, and the thing that they pointed out was, it says that anyone with a physical disability can qualify automatically for legal aid. And that means if you are very rich but you broke your leg on the ski slope, you qualify. And that changes the rules. So we went back to the original, and it said exactly that. Except that it was so convoluted with, 3 or 4 subjective clauses within one sentence that they didn't even see that until it was exposing all the flaws. So they said to us, it's so easy to read. So when it's just easy to read, so we didn't dumb it down, we just made it easier to read, and we exposed all of, by not using passive voice and using active voice and those kinds of things, it exposed a lot of the flaws in the original text. So I think that any industry that you're in, if you if you simplify it to the level that's appropriate to that audience, we don't use one-syllable words for everybody, but we do simplify the sentence structure, we do controlled vocabulary, we always call a widget, all those things that your grade 2 school teacher told you not to do, we do. And it makes it a lot better, I think. So that was just my response and comment, and thank you for that presentation.
Yeah, nice to have a comment from a professional, like high five for the plain language nerds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Natalia, so much. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.